Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about one of the latest patterns from Designer Stitch, the Jojo top tunic and dress pattern. And I was a tester for this pattern, and I made, during testing, I made two garments with it. So I want to talk a little bit about these two dresses I made. And also in this video, it's split it in two. So the first part is going to be the review of the garments I've made, and the second part is a tutorial I filmed while I made the second dress, the blue-white one with the skirt add-on. So if you really want to make this pattern and you are a beginner, in the second part of this video you see all the steps filmed like I in the way I used to make my own dress. So I think you have a lot of help from it. If you have any questions about the tutorial or about the steps that you see there, you can always put your questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. So the pattern is coming with a lot of options, like most of the Designer Stitch patterns. You have the options for V-neck, for round neck, for a deep cowl neck, for even for a hood. So a lot of options. Also there is an option to make the sleeves, to make them without cuffs or even with cuffs, and I think you can adjust the length of your cuffs and you get a really different look. I want to say that if you think that the cowl in the green dress is looking a little bit different, it is different. It is so because that one is made with the original pattern, the first one that I got as a tester. And during testing, Anne from Designer Stitch together with us decided to make it to adjust it a little bit, and now the final cowl is a little bit more, you know, it has a little bit wider base that is falling even nicer than the original one. The garments I've made, I made my typical size 2, I'll say, but in the meantime my body did change a little bit, and in the pattern that I'm testing now for Designer Stitch I am a 3. So size 2, but you know, this is also a little bit oversized garment, and I think you can you need to take a good look at the finished measurements, and based on that to decide your size. Based on the finished measurements I did make a 2, and I did not make any changes. I think I only took a little bit off from the length. This is something I always do, but I did not make my sway back adjustment because this is a really you know, wide garment, and it was not necessary. As I said, the first version I made, it is this one. You'll see here in a picture for better pictures from this dress modeled, and also here you can see on YouTube, you see an action video where you can see how the fabric is moving and the dress is moving. So a few details about this one, because this sweater knit is pretty stretchy, as you can see. I was really afraid that when sewing the sleeves, this is my sleeve. Oh, I remember about one of the most important changes I made actually. After I sewed this up, it was really, I had a lot of fabric here under my arm. So based on another dress I have that is a little bit the same cut, I took quite a bit off from the sleeve and here off, and then blended back at the hips to make it a little bit more fitted. So because this fabric is really stretchy, as I said, and I was afraid that I would get a lot of ripples here at my sleeves, I decided to add at the back seam a little bit of stay tape. I think it's from Flissalina, and the code of it is T20 or something like that. You can buy it on really big rolls, even for 100 meters, I think. As you can see here, is that kind of tape that it has a row of straight stitches in it, so that is preventing the seam to stretch even further. And I'm using that. I fused that on the back bodies, and then I just sew it. But the idea is that you need to keep in mind to have that row of stitches from the seam tape, to have it to stay in the seam, so that you are not trimming anything away. It's also nice, and I think it's something really that you really need to keep in mind when sewing with designer stitch patterns, that she's using, and from Designer Stitch is using industrial seam allowance standards. So you really need to read the instructions, or to take a good look at the seam allowances on your pattern, because they may vary, and you have there on the top on your pattern pieces, you have that, you know, the seam allowance is 1.5 centimeters unless otherwise stated, and it happened a lot that the seam allowance varies in a pattern from Designer Stitch. So this was the most important thing I changed here. This is not in your instructions, but I think you need to think about it before you are starting to sew your garment. So the seam tape in the back sleeve, and the trimming that I did under the arms, and I think this is something that you can do really easy after you put your pieces together, because you can really get the fit as fitted or wide as you want. And because now my armhole, you know, is not really fitted, as you can see in the pictures, but it's not so much fabric here anymore, and now I can even wear these garments with my Chelsea cardigans that do have a smaller armhole and a higher armhole. So if this garment did have so much fabric here, I could not wear it on with the cardigans that have a much higher armhole. A few details more about the green dress. I hemmed the sleeves with a zigzag stitch, because, you know, you cannot really see how it is hemmed. I think the most important is that you know, that you are not stretching things out, that they are starting to look you know, stretched out. And for the hem, because the fabric is really stretchy, I was thinking how I need to hem this easy, fast, and without getting all those waves. So, and to make it a little bit fun, this fabric has a green sparkle in it, and I decided to use some silver thread I had, and I just put it in the serger on the upper looper, and then with the rolled hem for my serger settings, I just ran it through the serger, and then I got this really cool silver hem. I really like it. I think it's a really nice and very easy detail to make. The other dress I've made with the skirt add-on is made in a very cool, very soft jacquard jersey that it was bought online in the Netherlands. Very nice and soft and easy to wear and easy to sew also. And for this option is the one where you have the top of the Jojo tunic top dress, and then you add the skirt. The skirt is very easy. It's only one pattern piece that is getting cut and fold 2 times, and you get in the instructions where you need to which length of the top you need to use use it together with the skirt. I use the tied length, and this is pretty long, but my fabric is really soft and drapey, and I think it's fitting. It's really nice in combination with the skirt and with the tied on skirt and the wider top. For this, initially I wanted to make the deep cowl on this neckline, but then I decided that you know, it will be a bit too much fabric, and also because of the a bit crazy print, I thought it would be nice to get a little bit skin showing here at the neck. So the only thing I did was to add a piece of thinner jersey to make a band, stitch it, turn it, and then top stitch it from the outside. I think it's looking really nice. I kept this inside out because I want to show you the elastic in the skirt. As I said in at the end of this video, or the second part of this video, you'll see the tutorial on about how I sew this dress together. And of course the skirt is sitting on because you are adding a piece of elastic in the seam where you attach the skirt to the bodice. And this is really easy to make, and I attached my elastic with a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine. Also in this version I used cuffs for my sleeves, and I really like them. And one of the testers used even longer cuffs and something like that. Let me see, something like that, and it's really, you get a really different look, and I think it's also really cool. And for this one I did not use anymore the seam tape in the shoulder sleeve, but I did use it in, you cannot see it anymore because it's binded. I did use it for the front and the back neck. I think you can see it in the tutorial, because you know, you have a little bit, I was afraid that it's going to stretch too much and then it's going to fall for my shoulders, but like this is really stable, and the hole is big enough to get my head over it without without the need of stretch. So I think this is everything. Of course, having the cuffs at the sleeves, you don't need to hem anything, very easy. You don't need to get in the small tube there. And for the hem I used a double needle, very easy to make and very easy to do. I didn't want to put the cover stitch out, but with the double needle is enough stretch, and it's also very easy to make just on the sewing machine. So this was everything what I had to say about the Jojo tunic. If you want to have to buy the pattern, you can go on, of course, to the Designer Stitch webshop. I'll put a link here in the description of the video. It's an affiliate link. If you are going to click on it and buy your pattern through this link, I get a small commission with no cost for you, but you know, you are supporting me on this way, and if you do that, thank you very much. If you don't do that, it's okay, and I hope you enjoy your pattern anyway. As I said, now you are going to see the tutorial for the white-blue skirt top combination dress. And if you have any questions, put them in your comments here below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more videos from me, you can subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoyed this video, you can share it with your friends, of course. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye! As I said, for this tutorial I'm going to use the tie-length Jojo pattern with the add-on skirt and the deep cowl neckline with just with the binding. I'm starting with applying the fusible seam tape, the one with the straight stitch in it, on the front and on the back neckline, and this is helping to the neckline to stay put and not stretch anymore. As you see here, the fabric is pretty stretchy, but the neckline is very rigid, and this is what I wanted. The next step is to attach the two pieces of the bodice, the front and the back, and I'm doing this pinning the front to the back, of course, right sides together, and I like to do as much steps I can in one time. As you see here, I'm pinning the shoulder with the sleeve, and then also the under sleeve. I'm just showing you here that you need to match the seams at the stitching line and not at the seam allowance line. So as I said, I want to to take to the sewing machine as much as I can, and in this case the shoulders and the sleeve line, and then the underseam, undersleeve with the side seam, because this is a in one piece you have both sides and the sleeves in one time. And then also I'm pinning the cuffs on the longer edges, and of course I'm also going to pin together the two panels of the skirt. And doing like that, I have all these pieces that I can sew in one time, and then I can take everything to the pressing board, and like this everything is taking much lesser time than sewing a little bit and going to the pressing board and so on. So everything is pinned, and now we are going to the serger. I made this dress almost completely with a serger. I only used the sewing machine for the binding and for the hem of for hemming the skirt. Here also the cuffs, sew in one time, and a little bit of chain stitching, of course here the second, and of course the skirt, the side seams of the skirt, of course, of the skirt. Step is to press everything, and I like to press everything as sewn first, and then pressing the seams to one side. You will not have any instructions in the designer stitch about finishing seams or pressing to the right or left or center front or center back. This is something that is supposed that you know already, but you know, sometimes if you're not sure, you can search around or go with your feeling. And for example, for the skirt I pressed everything to the back, and also the side seams of the top are pressed to the back. And to press this kind of tubes I always use my pressing roll, that is making very easy to press these seams without pressing all other things around. So and the skirt is pressed, and now for the bodice, also the side seams and the shoulder seam with the sleeve, of course, are pressed to the back. This is how I like to do it. The next step is, of course, to attach the skirt to the bodice, and you need to keep in mind that the narrower side is the hem, of course. So the wider part of the skirt is going to be attached at the waist with to the bodice, and you will match the side seams with the center front and the center back of the skirt and of the bodice. As you will see, the bodice is much wider than the skirt, so you have to stretch your skirt a little bit to ease in all the extra fabric you have in the bodice. Also here I'm taking advantage to take as much as I can to the sewing machine, or to the serger in this case, and this here I'm pinning my cuffs. Of course I matched the seam of the cuffs with the underseam, and then I made a few notches that I quartered the cuff. Then I know that I need to, because also here you need to stretch the cuff to match in your sleeve, because the sleeve is a little bit wider, and then you get those you know, that gathering in your cuffs. As you can see, you have pretty much you have a lot of space there, a lot of extra fabric in the sleeve, but if your fabric stretches enough, and of course this is something that you need to keep in mind when you are choosing your fabric for this pattern. If you want to make the cuffs, you need to have a fabric that is stretchy, so when you stretch that you can stretch the cuff to help the extra fabric from the sleeve to ease in. This is a very fast project, and really if you are using this technique to sew as much as you can in one time and then to go to the pressing board, you are saving a lot of time, and it's making, of course, the whole sewing project very fast. The cuff is sewn here, and it will need a little bit of a pressing. And here I have the skirt to the bodice, and I'm sewing always with the larger part on the dog feet, and with the skirt on the upper side, that I can stretch the skirt and is in the underneath layer, in this case the bodice, or the top of the dress, should I say. If you pin like this horizontally, you should keep in mind to take your pins out before you are getting to the knife of your serger, because otherwise you don't have the chance. You'll for sure destroy your knife. Here I'm pressing again as I sew, as the seam was sewn, and then pressing. I press here the seam up. Do your best. Use a lot of steam, and you'll get a very nice sleeve with a cuff. Of course, repeat for the other side. And then for you have to press that waist seam. I'm calling the waist seam, but it's actually much lower than your natural waist. And then you will have to apply your elastic. Use your instructions for this, but I measure the elastic at the point where I want to have my skirt, and then took a few inches, a few centimeters off. You should really fit your elastic, and this will be for sure much shorter than the waist seam on your dress. Then quarter the elastic, so in 4 equal parts. I put the seams together, the ends of the elastic, and then sew with a small zigzag. And then after I quartered my elastic, I matched those 4 points with the side seams of the dress, and with the center front and the center back. And of course, as we did with the skirt to the top of the dress, we'll do here with the elastic and the whole waist seam, or the drop waist seam, because as I said, it's sitting much lower than your natural waist. And you have to stretch, in this case, the elastic to meet your the elastic to ease in the garment. And I am applying this on the top of the serged seam, and I'm matching the edge of the elastic with the serged seam. And for this I'm going to use the sewing machine with a regular zigzag stitch. You need to make a little bit of a test to see, because you need to have a zigzag stitch that is not too narrow, because you don't want to because if you use a very narrow zigzag stitch, you'll get it's really not good for elastic, and of course also not too big one, because then it will not stretch enough and it will pop. Maybe you need to make a small test. Every machine is different, but as you see here, this is the idea. You stretch the elastic to meet your seam, and then of course when the elastic is relaxed, everything is going to ease in. And as you can see here, I think the most important thing is to try to keep that elastic a little bit, as I said, match it with this inside seam. And because you need to stretch the elastic, you need to keep it at the back of the machine with your hand, and to keep it a little bit straight also. It's not a very fast process, but you, as if you get the grip on it, you see at the moment it's getting very fast. Not as fast as here, because here I had to put it on fast speed at the moment, but it's really not difficult. As you can see here, this is the idea, and on the back you have the serge seam. Try to keep the points you've made, the 4 points, the center front, center back, and the side seams matched with the 4 points on your elastic, to keep everything you know, even eased, that you'll not get much more fabric in the front or in the back, or otherwise I think the side seams are going to get a little bit twisted. And when you get to the end, you just need to make a few extra stitches, you know, to overlap your stitches, and then you have your elastic attached. The very important thing is next to give this elastic a very good steam. Don't put your iron necessary on it, but you just keep it a few centimeters over, and give it a really good steam, and it will help to bring the elastic back in shape, and you'll see it in front of your eyes how the elastic is getting small again. This step is also very easy. I didn't want to use for my binding the same fashion fabric, because that one is a little bit bulky, is a jacquard jersey, so I used a very thin jersey, a little bit dark blue, to match a bit my my fashion fabric, 4 centimeters wide. I decided on it because I think it's a nice width, and this I just fold it in 2, press it, and I did not measure my neckline, but I just used a piece of binding that was longer than what I thought I will need, and then the next step is to pin this around the neckline on the right side, matching the raw edges of my dress, or of the neckline, with the raw edge of my binding. And usually I'm starting, you should have at this moment the center front and the center back clipped, or marked, and then I'm starting just a few centimeters from the, or I'm pinning first at the center back, and then I'm continuing all the way around the neckline. And as you can see, I am just giving a little bit of a tug to the binding, to have it just a little bit smaller than as you can see here, smaller than the neckline, because when I'm going to sew this, I want to have the neckline, if you want, a little bit eased in, to have it tight on my body and to avoid gaping. And when I'm getting back to the center back, I will just, as you can see, I give it again a little bit of a tug, and then I'm going to mark those 2 points where the binding is meeting in the center back, and there I'm going to give to make a seam to close the neck binding, and this I just used a straight stitch on my sewing machine. So I am matching here the 2 snips I've made, and I know that is the where I need to sew. So the binding is sewn together, a little bit difficult to see the darker color. And the next step is to trim off the extra fabric, and I also pressed that little seam open to you know, to avoid the bulk, everything in one side. So now I'm pressing the band again doubled, and then matching it back to the center back of my neckline. And this I'm going to take to the sewing machine and sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Everything is sewn here with 1 centimeter seam allowance, and what I want to do next is to trim the seam allowance a little bit, because the next step is going to be to turn this binding to the inside. But before I'm starting to trim, I pressed everything as it was sewn. And you know, if you are trimming you should really read your instructions, because the instructions might be different. But as you can see, the idea is to turn it to the inside and then top stitch it from the front, from the outside. But to have it nice turned, you need to most of the time you would be instructed to clip in your seam, but it's really not necessary. If you are trimming your seams, your seam allowance short enough, everything is going to turn beautifully, even if it is in a curve or something like that. And this here I'm clipping away the seam allowance, but you know, normally you go 2 times to trim one seam allowance bigger than the other one. But if you are keeping your scissor a little bit, as you see here, like this, a little bit to the side, you have the 2 different lengths in your seam allowance. So this is going in one time and very fast, of course. Of course, you need to be careful not to trim your binding or to make a hole in your dress. But if you are keeping your scissor like this, a little bit to the side, you will see that you get a beautiful trimmed seam allowance. By this we are almost approaching the end of this tutorial. The next step is going to be pressing this binding to the inside, and I think it's nice to try to press the seam also a little bit to the inside, to have just a pick of the fashion fabric to the inside of your neckline. So by doing this, you are going to avoid having the binding picking out to the outside. As you can see here, I try to zoom in a little bit to give you a better look. This is the idea, to get that pick of your fashion fabric to the inside. Go around, press it good, and then just stitch it with a straight stitch from the outside of your garment. The last step, of course, is to hem your dress, and I did that just by turning one time 2 centimeters and stitch it with a double needle, and that is completing, and that is everything. So this is a very easy garment to make, very fast, and you know, if you are using an easy fabric, is really a success garment. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!